All right, so welcome to today's episode, and today we are talking about what are the 3 different acquirers and which one is the best one when you are looking to sell your business. So the first one is the individual investor. The second one is private equity group, and then the third one is the strategic investor. So let's just start with talking about the individual investor. And usually the problem with that one is they are using an SBA loan. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons of an individual investor.
Well, I mean, with an individual investor coming in, there's a lot less moving pieces, there's a lot less nuances to it. The other side of it is they're also going to use like bank financing, and it's a little easier that way, and you're going to get all your money up front. So
well, and a lot of times the seller in those cases have to take a note because with SBA they want to, and so the seller's not getting all of their money up front.
Yeah, and they're in second position on that. Even in a security agreement, they're in second behind SBA. So that's
it's usually the lowest valuation and the lowest multiple when you're selling to an individual.
They don't have as much free cash.
Okay, now the second type is private equity groups. So why don't we talk a little bit about some of the pros, some of the cons of each?
Well, I mean, the private equity, makes it a lot easier because they're bringing in a large amount of capital, infrastructure, and systems. The downside is they're going to add on debts, they're going to add on management things, and more control over the business.
Yeah, because what they do is they usually buy a percentage of your business, and most of the time it's either 60% or 70%, and it's mostly a controlling share.
Yeah, so now they're controlling it, but you're still present to do the work.
Yes, so you're still in it for sure. They're pretty much not going to buy it most of the time if you're not willing to stay in it.
Right.
So let's talk about, there's a story about a guy named Ryan Moran. He's actually, I just heard this story, and I want you to kind of share some of the details of that.
So him and the partner went out there and they sold their business for, I don't know, on paper it was like $18 million. All right, but
well, he only sold 60%.
I'm getting ready to explain that.
Okay.
So he sold it for $18 million. But the problem is that they only got 60% up front, but they took the 40% and rolled it in. So they probably heard the statement that it's better to have a small percentage of a watermelon than 100% of a grape, right? Like that's the pitch they're going to do. But then you're going to go in there, they have 40%. So now he's working in the business, they're doing it. But then private equity does it. They go in, they add management, they add in debt service. They're trying to get their money out. They're extracting their money out. They ran the company all the way to zero. So he didn't get 18 million.
They got bankrupt.
He got 60% of the money up front and then had the 40% run to zero while working at that period of time.
Yeah, so that's a huge risk. And then the third kind is a strategic acquirer, which in my opinion is always the best one. And so my favorite story, I talk about this all the time. I love this story about Stephanie Breedlove, and she actually sold her company to Care.com, and she had $9 million worth of revenue. And the way that it worked is she did payroll for people who wanted nannies, right? Like, people who had nannies at home or babysitters or whatever, and she did payroll for only that. Talk about one of the most niche companies out there. And so Breedlove had really had the business for about 25 years. And when she looked at it, she said, for who would my business be worth more in their hands than in my hands? And she came up with Care.com, and that's exactly who she said would give the most amount for the business. And she said at the time, Care.com had 7 million subscribers. And so the way she sold it to them was she's like, look guys, if you just to your 7 million subscribers, all these people need payroll. If 1%, that would be 70,000 new customers, you would get your money back in no time.
Right.
So that's how she sold it. So that's definitely a strategic buyer. The other one is Blinds.com. You want to share that story with Blinds.com?
No, I don't remember it. I don't remember. I know we've talked about it, but I can't remember right now.
So Blinds.com was the number one in their industry of selling blinds. And Home Depot came along and they said, okay, they're number one in blinds. They've figured out that, and they didn't really care about being number one in blinds. What they cared about is they figured out that Blinds.com came up with the secret sauce of how to sell a complicated product online, because everything Home Depot was doing was where? In the stores.
Yeah.
So they were like, we can't keep doing this.
They bought the system.
Yeah. They were like, they came up with the secret sauce. We need to buy the secret sauce. Yes, they wanted to be top in blinds, but that's not why they bought it. The strategic partnership was because they wanted to sell all their other products, not just in the stores,
base.
but online. And so that's exactly why it was a strategic sale.
I love smart stuff like that. I really do. It just really challenges your brain to think outside of the box.
Well, and back to the story we were just talking about. Think about the multiple that girl, Stephanie Breedlove, she got her original offer was $40 million. Now remember, her revenue, not profit. Her revenue was $9 million. She ended up selling for $54 million. So based on a multiple of revenue, that's a huge amount. So when you sell to a strategic partner, when you pull out a deal like that, that's what we call, it's called punching above your weight or wrestling above your weight. I want you to talk about that, because our son, we talk about that all the time. Every time we're watching something, we use that phrase in our house all the time when we're watching fights.
It's usually about me and you, because I definitely am punching out of my weight class to be married to you.
Well, we'll just talk about what punching above
Well, and
your
that
weight
just gives you the
means.
visual right there, right? Like she's very, very valuable, and so she's above what I'm capable of pulling off, because she's amazing. But but that's really what it's talking about with businesses, that the business can sell at a multiple. If it was going to sell at 3 or 4 times profit, that would be an average in an industry, right? And so if you go and get 3 or 4 times revenue, then that's punching above your weight class. And by doing that, because you're saying this revenue can come to your business. Now, I'll also tell you there is a trade-off in the strategic side, because the strategic side is what you may say you may get the most amount, and you're going to get the clap for, right? And that can be fine. But it can also leave the employees in the business in a different place, because they're buying the revenue. They may need to eradicate some of those positions, and that exiting can be bad for the company, the name, the brand, or whatever it is, as they centralize services or whatever they do in that strategic acquisition. So
yeah. And I want to say, like, even if right now you're like, I'm happy with my business, I don't want to sell, guess what? At least get a valuation of what your business is worth. And if you haven't read the book yet, Grow, Scale, and Exit,
you got to read it.
You got to read it, because it's going to
We read it every night. It's a bedtime story that we do every night.
It's going to really
Chapter 7 really gets me.
Change your thoughts on, why you need to think about your business completely different. And I mean, one of the things I will say this story again, but every time we go speak at a live event, we do it every single time, and we have a room full of entrepreneurs, and we say, if you right now are the number one salesperson in your business, and what happens?
They stand up. You tell them to stand up.
Stand up or raise their hand, one of the two.
Yeah.
And everybody stands up. And it's kind of like they think it's like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And then when I look at them and I go, guys, you're selling the wrong thing. You are trying to be the best at your business, and the more valuable you are in your business, the less valuable your business is.
You just made me think of something. I talked to a guy the other day, and he said, I talked to him about partnering on something. He said, I don't really need a partner. I said, well, why not? He said, because I can already do the tech, do the marketing, and do the sales, right? And he said, so I can do all of it myself. And I just dawned on me, he had a really small exit of a company, and he really is capable. He's really, really talented. And it just dawned on me, it was almost like reflective to myself. I was like, I don't want to be good at all 3. I want to hire the team around me. I want to bring in the strong people around me, because there's somebody, if you're doing all 3, you can't be the best at all 3. You can just be good at all 3, but you can't be great at any one if you're good at all 3. I guess that would be probably the best way to put it.
The last thing I want to talk about is terms and price, because a lot of people try to decouple the price and the terms of a business. And I think that, it's really, really important that you don't just look at how much you're getting, but some of the terms for the business. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, that's what we talk about with anything, any deal we're ever doing. I say you can pick the price if I can pick the terms, and if you pick the terms, then I'll pick the price. And so if interest rate goes up, price goes down. If the thing goes longer or shorter, whatever, all that matters. More cash up front means less interest or whatever overall, less risk. So your variance of risk. So there's just all different ways in which term and price really can combine together to make the deal.
I'll give you a scary story. There's a guy named Sonny Vanderbeck, and he built a tremendous company. And I think their valuation at one point was like $1 billion. And they literally sold the business for a couple $100 million for stock in this other larger company, and it ended up, the stock itself of that other company went to zero, and he ended up buying the assets back. And if you sell your company and the terms are not cash but stock, that's a major issue. And he thought this other company was so great, but at one point it looked like he had made a catastrophic mistake, right? Thank God he was able to turn it around. He ended up selling the assets and ended up flipping it again and did well. But at one point when it would have been a catastrophic deal. So the terms of the deal are really, really important, and you cannot decouple those two things. So that's another little tip that you want to look at. But
you're full of nuggets.
All right. Well, we are so grateful that you were with us today. Thank you guys so much for being with us. We want to help you make an incredible exit. We are so passionate about helping people get their value to the highest amount that you possibly can, selling for top dollar, and then helping you get that dream factor of what you want to do next. So stay with us. We'll have another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.